Every week, college football games hinge on a single word.
Touchdown. Touchdown, Texas. Touchdown, Oklahoma. Touchdown. Touchdown. Touchdown, Wisconsin. Touchdown. 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 Touchdown, Stanford. Touchdown. Touchdown, Alabama. Touchdown, Notre Dame. Touchdown. Wow.
This is Touchdown Radio. Here's Gino Torretta and Taylor Zarzour.
It is week 10 of the college football season here on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. He is Gino Torretta, the two-time national champion, the Heisman Trophy winner. I'm Taylor Zarzour. We're getting you ready for a terrific slate here in week 10. Gino, this feels bigger than any other week to me, especially with those two massive games in the SEC. Number 6, Alabama at number 10, LSU in Tiger Stadium in Death Valley on Saturday night, preceded by number 1 Tennessee at number 3 Georgia between the hedges in Athens. This is where it gets good, right?
Well, there's no question. I think that obviously Tennessee has continually gotten better. You still hold your breath on the defensive side because they've shown some weaknesses, a la the Alabama game, and given up a lot of points through the air. In Alabama, it seems like every year, wherever that one loss, if they've even had a loss in a regular season with their back against the wall, they somehow, morph themselves, or they don't really change. They just buckle down and get it done through the course of the season. But having to go on the road, LSU has gotten better. Think back, the start of the season where they were struggling, back and forth in the first game against Florida State. And then now they're, ranked high and everybody's fired up at them again. But it should be great. And then the Big Ten, it's like Michigan and Ohio State I think are so much better than the rest of the conference that I think even with some of these rankings, with where these teams are, it's like, are they really that good? Because I get that Penn State was top 10 when Michigan just beat them. But really, were they top 10? Because the two best teams in the conference, took care of them, mighty handily.
Yeah, they did. We'll get back to the Big Ten. I'm going to hold you to these picks coming up later. But again, concentrating on these two huge games in the SEC, who do you give a better chance to as the underdog? Number 1 Tennessee on the road in Athens, or number 10 LSU at home Saturday night in Death Valley against the Tide?
Personally, I would say Tennessee. I just, having just watched them against Kentucky, and Josh Heupel and Hendon Hooker have kind of a communication, whether it's whether they're getting signals from the sidelines or whatever. When they speed up, he's right on cue. When they slow it down, they're on cue. He's always trying to catch the defenses off balance or off. When they're trying to substitute, he'll just, hey, they just run up line of scrimmage, snap a play, and there's 12 men on the field. There was one play in the Kentucky game, Taylor, if there wasn't 17, 18 guys on Kentucky's defense when they snapped the ball, I swear I was like, I don't know how many guys were out there, but I know it was more than 11, and like half of them were running off the field. And then you get Jalen Hyatt. How do you get that wide open? It's just like they're running just double stack near the sideline, and they're trying to 3-on
every time.
Yeah, they're trying to 3-on-2 these guys. The guy you're gonna cover is the best receiver on their team, and he's not covered. That's the whole thing where I think that there are things that Hooker and Heupel seeing on the defense. They just have it on the defensive side going on. And I thought, defensively, man, Kentucky, Tennessee's run defense has been pretty good all year. Less than 100 yards a game. It was top 5. I think it was second in the SEC. They come out and think they're just going to hammer the ball in between the tackles, and Tennessee shut them down. And then, it was Levis had to throw, and Tennessee was just eating them up on the front.
We made some mistakes again on Saturday night, and you got a blowout. And I didn't think you would. I thought you'd get a good game. Instead, it was 44-6, and that was one of the most impressive performances we've seen in college football this season. It's a good point you make about that double stack, because wouldn't you want to cover the guy that's streaking down the field and just and give up the underneath pass. And
you know what? Here's a
deep
double
ball.
stack. Here's a double stack. Jerry Rice is one of them. Who are you going to cover? Jerry Rice. If you double Jerry Rice, and that's the whole thing. You get these defenses, and I think it's so hard to cover space. And talking to Mike Stoops and Mark before the game, it's what Baylor was doing years ago. It's so hard to cover space. And then you have trying to scheme that in a week in college, and guys just break, they bust coverages. And then if you play the stacks with 3-on-2, which Kentucky was doing, you can run the rock.
I do think that this is the best defense that Tennessee will have seen all year. And with Jalen Carter back as an interior defensive lineman for the Dogs, who looked great against Florida last week. This is one of the top picks in the draft, who hasn't been on the field the entire season so far. If he can pressure Hooker, unlike any interior defensive lineman for any team Tennessee's faced so far, that could be a big factor. I'm not as bullish on Georgia's defense without Nolan Smith, though. He's out for the season, and he's a terrific linebacker. And if Hooker gets out of the pocket, he usually is so good with his legs. And I thought Nolan Smith might neutralize that, but him being out of this game, I think, is a big factor. But I do think that Georgia defense will get more pressure than, say, an Alabama or in Kentucky did. That'll be fun to watch in Athens. And the game's on the road. I think I agree with you that Tennessee's got the better chance against Georgia. But, Gino, Alabama's defense on the road, every time they go on the road, and they're facing an LSU offense that's humming right now. I'm interested to watch that on Saturday night, too.
Well, there's no question. One thing, going back to the Tennessee, you mentioned the mobility of Hooker.
Yeah.
Now, go back to when Nick Saban would have kind of trouble in these spread offenses and stopping them. Mm-hmm. And before he became a spread offense guy himself, was where did he run into trouble? If the quarterback could run. And that's where if I'm Tennessee trying to go at Georgia, Hooker's going to be a runner this week. He can throw. Listen, he can throw any of the balls out there and in the passing game, but I think that he will be more game planned into those quarterback runs, because if Georgia tries to 3-on-2 those stacks, man, you have such an advantage on the interior running the ball. And I would bet that Hooker there are going to be more design runs for Hendon Hooker this week than there have been. Regarding Alabama, there's something to, when a team has been dominant over another, what it seems like for a long time, and that Alabama over LSU. Take out Burrow when his offense was, could beat anybody, probably some of the teams in the National Football League that season. And I just think, for whatever reason, I think that Nick Saban, and I think he does better with the rat poison, the complacency issue, because we haven't seen a team reach the pinnacle and to continue be right there to be able to reach the pinnacle. And I will just say, when they have lost one game, I don't know if that's a wake-up call to the team, but it seems like everything is buckled down and turned up a notch.
And I want you to watch out for this guy on Saturday night. He wears number 7 for the Crimson Tide on defense. His name is Eli Ricks, and he is their best cover corner, and all of a sudden he started playing a couple weeks ago. This guy was in the Saban doghouse. He's an LSU transfer. The whole world wanted this kid to go play football for them. He went to LSU. He transferred to Alabama, got in Saban's doghouse. You didn't see him at all at the beginning of the year, and he showed up against Mississippi State 2 weeks ago, and that guy is as good a cornerback as we've seen in college football. He didn't play against Tennessee, at least in critical situations. We will see him on Saturday night against LSU, so that'll be fun to watch. And when I was growing up in the great state of Alabama, people had these T-shirts, "The Tide Can't Lose" in Baton Rouge. And then that streak ended eventually, where LSU won the game. I think 2010 LSU beat Alabama. But they haven't won in Baton Rouge since. So it's back to what I was like when I was a kid. The Tide can't lose in Baton Rouge. They've won 5 in a row there in Baton Rouge. So these are 2 massive games. I'm fun. It's going to be fun to see how they shake out on Saturday, once we're all done on Saturday night.
Yeah, there's no question. I don't even know who I picked, but I'm sure I'll be wrong. And I think you made me pick these games a few weeks ago, and
I'm not
obviously
holding you to that. You get
the
to make another pick later in the season.
the college football playoffs came out,
Yeah.
and I think the initial reaction is to not overreact. I mean, every year, it seems like we get the initial rankings, and everybody is just, oh my God, I can't believe they disrespected this team. Or
yeah, you're right. We're not going to go too crazy with it, but we are going to go through it in the next segment. And there's a couple things to scrutinize there.
Oh,
by the way,
no question. But
we'll get to it. By the way, you did pick up a game on me last week. You had the Rebels in College Station. I had the Aggies. So I'm done riding that horse this year. You now are only 3 games behind. We both lost with Syracuse. How about the Fighting Irish whipping Syracuse? And now Notre Dame's got Clemson this week. Holy cow, worst pick of the year. Oklahoma State completely annihilated last week. And against K-State, 48-0. South Carolina Gamecocks lost to the Missouri Tigers. They didn't stay in the top 25 for long. Mizzou looked good in Columbia, South Carolina. So we did win with Utah, Ohio State, Tennessee, and North Carolina. We'll see what happens this week when we make some picks. We got a military game to pick. Air Force at Army. Oklahoma State is on the road. Kansas still trying to get that 6th win, get back into a bowl game. Of course, we'll pick the 2 big games in the SEC. K-State as Texas. Hugh Freeze. Everybody's talking about him. His team's ranked in the top 25. Liberty is at Arkansas this week. Clemson at Notre Dame. And yes, I don't care if they're not ranked. It's still a great rivalry, and we're picking it. FSU at Miami on Saturday night. We'll get to that one as well. Coming up in the next segment, let's go through the rankings as they were released by the College Football Playoff Committee. We'll do that on Touchdown Radio Tailgate on ESPNU Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 84. We're on Touchdown Radio Tailgate here as we're getting ready for Week 10 of the college football season. He is Gino. I am Taylor. Coastal Carolina is playing App State at the bottom of the hour. Good game in the Sun Belt. Coastal 7-1. Best record of any team that's not ranked, by the way, as they are 7-1. The Chanticleers on the season. Maybe not out of it for the New Year Six, as crazy as that may sound. Appalachian State 5-3, trying to get bowl eligible. So that's coming up at the bottom of the hour. Speaking of the rankings, let's go through them here. Tennessee's number 1, Ohio State's number 2, Georgia's number 3. I'm going to stop right there. Do you have any issue with the top 3 in the college football rankings, Gino? Would you put them in any different order than the committee had at least the top 3?
How they are in the order, or that those are the top 3? I think those are the top.
Give me your top 3. Okay.
I think those are the top 3 no matter what. So, I mean,
okay.
Does it matter? I thought Georgia was still going to be number 1. And I thought that the coin flip was going to be Tennessee, Ohio State, which I would have put Tennessee 2, Ohio State 3, because I think Tennessee's resume so far is better than Ohio State's.
But you wouldn't put them number 1.
I didn't say it. Well, I don't know. You call me old school because you're talking about the defending national champion. They're still undefeated. To me, I think they should be number 1. Their defense is rolling around. I don't know if they're just looking for weaknesses. I'm not going to say, it's almost the same issue of a guy winning the Heisman Trophy the second time, why it's been so hard, because you have a bar set by a player that had that magical season, and he can't, Tim Tebow can't score 60 touchdowns the next year. I mean, it's a ridiculous bar. So the bar for Georgia last year is way up here, and I think that maybe the committee's looking at them like, well, they're not as good as they were last year, and so that's just kind of my thinking. But I thought it would have been Georgia 1, Tennessee 2, and Ohio State 3. But it really, that's splitting hairs. It doesn't matter because those 3 are in if it stops. So, and I agree with those 3 should be in if it stops.
I'm surprised Michigan's not number 4. In fact, I could.
Well, I think your battle, to me, Clemson, Michigan, and TCU all have a claim to the 4th spot. I don't think there's any question there. And I would think that the there would be an edge there or a nod to Michigan and TCU over Clemson based on how some of the Clemson games have gone.
And I know I'm going to get a text from one of my closest friends who's a Clemson guy who plays the woe is me card, we get no respect stuff all the time, which just drives me nuts because I think that's ridiculous. Clemson gets plenty of respect. I don't think this Clemson team looks nearly as strong as an undefeated team as the other undefeated teams have so far, and TCU included so far this year. And so that was my surprise is you're right. Ultimately, Gino, it doesn't really matter where they're ranked right now. It's going to work itself out. But I was a little surprised they had Clemson 4 and they had TCU down at number 7 underneath one-loss Alabama. To me, the Frogs deserve to be in the top 5 right now. And that's where at least I'd have them. But again, if TCU runs the table, then I don't know how you're going to keep them out of the college football playoff.
Well, there's no question there. And to me is Clemson, you kind of feel bad because, listen, as a player, you don't make the schedule. You're just going to go out there and play the teams that are on your schedule. Yeah. But their conference, the ACC, is not very good.
It's not, and the Big 12 is better
than
the ACC.
And that's the thing. It's like, listen, sorry, but this is the same argument that people had about Cincinnati. Well, they're in the AAC. You put them in the SEC, they wouldn't have that record. But they're not. So you have to evaluate. We're just evaluating Clemson on, okay, who have they beaten? Who are the teams on their schedule? And, they've struggled at times against teams that aren't top flight teams. And that's kind of all we're saying. And maybe
and you look at their wins. They have wins against number 20, 21, and 22. Syracuse just got blown out at home against Notre Dame the week after they had Clemson on the ropes at Clemson. They had that overtime victory against Wake Forest, Clemson did. Wake Forest just had one of the worst performances of the season with the 8-turnover loss to Louisville. NC State's not the same team because Leary's not playing quarterback for him anymore. They now have 2 losses on the season. So you could kind of scrutinize all their wins. Meanwhile, I just don't get this. I don't get how TCU's number 7, the worst ranked undefeated team, and the only 3-loss team in the polls is Texas. So you have a Big 12 team that you're valuing more than any other with 3 losses that's in the poll, and you've got an undefeated team that's not getting nearly as much respect as the others. That just is an inconsistent message to me. But again, like you said, this is nitpicking.
Well,
it's not going to matter in the end, I don't think.
If I was a Clemson fan, my concern would be that's the highest they're going to get because they got Notre Dame this weekend, who's 5-3. Yep. Louisville is 5-3. Miami 4-4. South Carolina 5-3. Okay, in the rest of your season, where do you have a game that will allay any of the committee's issues with your team's strengths and or weaknesses? None of those games, they're going to be favored in all those games. They should take care of business, and it's going to come down to the ACC championship game. I assume they're going to play North Carolina, who's only got 1 loss, and that's going to be really, to go through a season, and this is why what you kind of feel bad, to go through a season and your one signature win, if UNC stays with 1 loss, is going to be in a conference championship game. That's, if you're going to make that argument for Cincinnati on a weak schedule, they got a weak schedule this year.
They do, although I would say I feel badly for Clemson that they do, because I do think Clemson's one of the best teams in the country, one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country. It's not their fault the rest of their conference isn't nearly as good as they are.
Agreed. We're just splitting hairs. All I'm pointing out is I would be concerned.
I would too, and I think you're right. But I do also don't blame Clemson for being so great at football. No. The rest of the ACC schools can't keep up.
Listen, I'll take their defense. I would take their defense with any school in the country because I think those guys can play. I think they're schemed well.
And even though the schedule is soft, I still think they're going to slip up somewhere with that quarterback play. They got to get better quarterback play. I don't care who they're playing if they're going to go 13-0 going into the playoff. A couple other things to mention here. I'm fascinated to see who gets the group of 5 bid to the New Year's 6 this year. We've got 2 teams that are ranked in the group of 5. Number 19, Tulane, is 7-1 and has the best spot of any group of 5 team. And then you've got UCF and the Gus Bus that are down there at number 25. I'm pretty sure that the American Conference is going to get the group of 5 bid. Whoever wins the American Conference is going to go to the New Year's Six, likely play in the Cotton Bowl in the New Year's Six. And Tulane right now is in the driver's seat, undefeated in conference play, as that one loss on the season, and that's it. Now, I am
well,
still
you got next week is really UCF Tulane is next week.
Yeah,
so I mean, really, it should come down to that's like a playoff game for those 2 schools.
Keep your eye on the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. Like we said, they're about to kick in just a second. They are only have 1 loss. If they run the table the rest of the way with only 1 loss, I could see a scenario where Coastal Carolina maybe would have a chance. Boise State, if they run the table in the Mountain West, still 2 losses. I'm not sure if that would be good enough. I think the American Conference is valued more. But here's one more reason why I'm mentioning all this and giving all this love to the group of 5. I'm confident 2 years from now, this 12-team playoff is going to start. And just think about where we're going to be 2 years from now, hopefully still doing the show with you. And we're going to be talking about
we're going to be going Touchdown Radio Tailgate to New Orleans to do a Tulane game.
and Gino, we're going to be talking about a group of 5 team like Tulane or UCF 2 years from now that has a legitimate path to the playoff, which is really exciting, I think, for programs like theirs. Yeah.
And like I said, like it becomes more inclusive. It may not change who the eventual national champion is, because that's what they're going to give the buys to the top teams. But to have another home game on a campus to enjoy all that and the college where there's more on the line. Like, I mean, just say this year and you have a 12 team and Clemson, obviously the schedule's weak. Let's just, your buddy's going to text you why you keep picking on Clemson. Let's just pick Clemson again. So another home game for them, but another opportunity of playing probably against a better opponent once they're in the first round of the playoffs. But no, it's awesome that they're going to do this and expand. And when they started this, to have 5 Power 5 conferences and not have 5 automatic bids was ridiculous from the start. And they could have figured out the machinations a long time ago, but now they've figured out how to do it and get everybody paid, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I pick up what you're putting down there. I'm just looking at this. So right now, if we had a playoff, 12-team playoff, and the season ended today, Tennessee, Ohio State, Clemson, TCU would be your top 4 seeds, because you get your conference champions in there. And then you've got your number 5 seed as a Pac-12 champion. Let's just say it's Oregon, since they're have a better ranking one spot better than USC. So they'd be number 5. Tulane at number 6. Then you'd have Georgia at 7 and Michigan at number 8. And are you ready for this? Michigan would play Alabama in the Big House.
Wow.
In a first round playoff game.
I know the Tennessee Georgia fan tickets are going for big dollars this week. Could you imagine Tennessee Bama in the first round at the Big House? 7,000 fans there. And oh, by the way, I would just say from experience, as some of the Southern kids and my Southern teammates traveling to Boston at the end of the year and having sleet around them and snow, and there may be some sleet or snow. That will be eye-opening for some of the players in the Southern conferences.
Now, they still have to work out the seedings and how all this would work. But assuming you give the best seeds to your conference champions, that would be.
Do you think they're going to do that?
I hope they do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just glad that it's going to expand. But people are going to gripe. They're going to be, well, wait a sec. We're ranked 7th or 9th.
But if they did do that, Michigan would play Alabama, Georgia would play USC, and then all the people that are clamoring for an expanded playoff, that means more SEC teams in the playoff, by the way. Tulane versus LSU, Oregon versus Ole Miss. So you'd have, what is that, 5 teams from the SEC that would make it into the playoff. But
But then you would also see, like, to me, if that happens, okay, let's say both SC would SC make it as well. Maybe they're border.
Yes.
So SC and Oregon. Don't you then bring more eyeballs from the West Coast
I think so.
into
No
the
question.
college football world? Because now,
at least in the first round, you do.
Yeah, we got a chance, and then you get people that are like, "Wow, I'm going to watch this. This is just awesome football." So, I think that it's going to go great. There's going to be some glitches, as well as I do, as far as that and seedings and that. But man, when it all started, all we thought at the start was, why can't we just have great games every weekend? And you can, if we just figure out, pay the lower division schools, and we're going to have Power 5 against Power 5, and play and see how the chips fall at the end of the year.
Speaking of the group of 5 schools, I want to show some love to those schools coming up in just a moment. And then later on, we'll make some picks on these massive games. Tennessee at Georgia, Bama at LSU, Florida State at Miami. Is Clemson going to slip up in South Bend this weekend? K-State's got Texas, Liberty at Arkansas, Oklahoma State's at Kansas, and we've got a chance to see who the commander-in-chief winner is going to be. Air Force plays Army this weekend. We'll get to all of that coming up on Touchdown Radio Tailgate on ESPNU Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 84. Let's salute some of the group of 5 teams in college football that have had good years. Congratulations to the East Carolina Pirates. Arg. They got their 6th win, beating BYU last week. Toledo, also a 6th victory. They're in very good position in the MAC. So they're at 6 wins. South Alabama Jaguars crushing Arkansas State to get to 6 wins. Boise State in the driver's seat in the Mountain West Conference once again is at 6 wins. And the Wyoming Cowboys also are bowl eligible after their victory last week. Congratulations to each of those teams. Ohio, the Bobcats on Tuesday night. Tuesday night Maction is back, baby. They are now 6-win team on the season. Coastal Carolina is playing App State right now. If App State pulls off the upset, they would get to a 6th win. Air Force has a chance for a 6th win when they play Army on Saturday. We'll pick that game in the next segment. And I just want to go through this real quickly. Western Kentucky, Southern Miss, North Texas, Houston, San Jose State all have a chance at bowl eligibility. And some may say, what's the big deal with that? Well, it's a huge deal for a group of 5 program to get that bowl money, Gino, get that experience of playing in a bowl game. We talked about the meaning behind some of these bowls in the past. The truth is millions of people watch them during the holidays. So this is big for all those programs, and we wish each of them well.
Yeah, huge for the programs, and maybe also see a head coach that might be on a grander stage in a season. Because
that's a great point.
Those schools that are having success, and maybe it's not a household name, and I'm sure Brian Harsin was not a household name at Auburn before he was hired. That these guys, these coaching staffs that are getting these teams into bowl games are definitely on the radar of the athletic directors.
Glad you mentioned that, because I have Arkansas versus Liberty on Saturday, and Hugh Freeze just signed a long contract extension. He's the highest paid coach in the group of 5. Liberty's going to Conference USA. They're an independent team now. They're going to Conference USA next year. I don't believe the buyout is something that's going to bother Auburn. Certainly, they haven't been bothered by any buyout with Gus Malzahn or with Brian Harsin the last few years. If you are the Auburn Tigers and new athletic director John Cohen, who comes over from Mississippi State, Coach Prime, Gino, Lane Kiffin, Hugh Freeze, or someone else? Where are you going?
I think all of those names that I'm at least talking to. But Taylor, how many years have we been doing games together? And it seems like every year or every 2, there's either their coach is going to get fired, the athletic directors changing jobs and things like that. I don't know. I think you got to look inside, and if you're Auburn and you have to do something to fix whatever it is that constantly changes, it seems like the the pickers, if you will,
Yes.
the people making the choice.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, that, the coach isn't a good fit. Well, the athletic director was wrong. So he changed the athletic director, he changed the coach, and then it's a downward spiral. And to me, it's like, until you have your own house in order. Now I realize they're going to pay a ton of money to whoever it is, and maybe that gets you past the issues that Auburn has, because it's almost like, I mean, hell, it's hard enough to recruit kids. It's hard enough to bring, 100 kids in and make them a team and win football games, than to deal with administration issues, what seems like on a daily basis at Auburn.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like Alabama before Nick Saban is what you're describing. Is exactly like what Alabama was going through, and then they hire a coach who has no tolerance for anybody else's ideas for how the program should be built. He has his ideas for how the program should be built, and obviously through his success, everybody else has supported him and just shut up and said, you know what, this guy knows what he's doing better than anybody else. If you hire somebody that's that successful, then obviously no matter how big of a booster you are, you're not going to get in anybody's way. But that is
I don't know about that, because Taylor, come on now, they've had some successful coaches. You go back to Tuberville, he was 7-1 or something like that against Alabama, and it was just like, okay, that's not good enough. And then it's like, the next guy, okay, we win a national championship, that's not good enough. And it's just
and by the way, that is why by the way, I would, if I could hire anybody, ideal scenario, I'm not thinking about who the boosters are or what the climate's like, culture, anything. Deion Sanders, to me, would crush it and change college football forever if he was the head coach at Auburn. But I do wonder if Deion is going to tolerate a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Right.
Deion runs his program. Deion at Jackson State is in charge of the whole place, the whole city right now. He's not going to be listening to a bunch of other people come in and tell him try to run a program. And that would make me nervous if I'm Deion. Lane Kiffin, that's the one that I would make him say no if I'm Auburn. At Ole Miss, he's done a great job. This whole NIL world and everybody trying to make sure that each player has enough money is a fascinating new reality in college football. And I think Auburn can play that game as well as anybody can. I'm not sure Ole Miss has the same kind of resources Auburn does. And I think if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'd be interested, especially coaching in the same state as Nick Saban. Hugh Freeze, though, we know can call plays as well as anybody, Josh Heupel included. You see what he's doing at Tennessee. Freeze was doing that at Ole Miss. All three of those guys would be great choices for Auburn, but I'm fascinated to see if the culture and the stigma that Auburn currently has about the support they're receiving, if that's a problem as they make this new hire.
I think it's not who you want. It's more of a question of, is there a return of love of, yes, I'm interested. But like, to me, you said Kiffin would be your first. I would say Deion. I think that what he's done, what he does to try to help these kids, and now if you gave him a budget, and oh, by the way, he's 80 miles south of Atlanta, and would have unlimited resources recruiting. I mean, to get the players he's gotten at Jackson State, to now have a private jet to go anywhere in the country, to me is,
I think he's going somewhere in the Power Five.
But does he want to deal with that? And that is the Auburn issue of, okay, and you have a new athletic director, Taylor. Is the new athletic director going to, like, to me, if I'm Deion and you have the new athletic director, okay, how powerful is he? Because at some point in time, you need that shield, you need that buffer, and is the AD going to be that person? Because he's going to have, I don't know, maybe you go to Bruce Pearl and figure out, okay, how do I get them to not mess with us and this and this once we get in the football office? Because, man, the facilities they're building for their football program and what they got and the support and the environment is top notch. And
I gotta share this story. The other night I was with Mark Barron, the former Alabama All-American, first-round draft pick, played in the NFL for a long time, unbelievable defensive player. I said, Mark, who, as an Alabama guy, who would make you most nervous? Lane, Hugh Freeze, and I tried to say D. He interrupted. He said Coach Prime. By a mile, Coach Prime would make me most nervous because that guy would go get a bunch of recruits and they would have talent immediately. So I'm fascinated to see what Auburn does. I think they're going to make a splash hire. It's just which one do they pick? Before we get out of here and get into some picks, I just real quickly need to know where, as a Heisman voter, where your head's at right now. Hendon Hooker this weekend, massive game for the Volunteers. C.J. Stroud's got to be on your list at Ohio State. Bryce Young, I don't care what happened last year, and I know that people don't like to pick the same winner 2 years in a row. This guy's very much on my radar as he goes to Baton Rouge this weekend and then to Oxford next weekend. How about you? Who's on your list?
Well, I think it's that. I think Corum, the running back in Michigan. I think the great thing is you have an opportunity if you're Hendon Hooker this week if you have a signature game on the road against Georgia. I would say that would probably vault him to the top of the list if he isn't already on the top of the list. I mean, his stats are unbelievable. I've seen him twice. He's been great with his legs. He's great decisions. Got, what does he have? One interception on the season. C.J. Stroud is there. He's going to have that opportunity against a Michigan defense. Corum on the other side would have it against Ohio State's defense that's much improved. Bryce Young, like I said, you feel bad for a guy when they win it as an underclassman because their bar is themselves, and he might be having a better season because he's carrying the
he doesn't
load.
have the same supporting cast he had last year.
He's carrying so much more of the load for Alabama, and he's amazing. He's magical. It was like, when you watch him, you watch Manziel, when those guys were in their prime, it's just like,
so fun.
It's just fun to watch. I mean, your jaw drops. And Tebow, it's just like you're like, wow, did they do that? Well, you and I did the Baker Mayfield and the Mahomes game. You're just like,
yeah.
It's hard to talk. I mean, hell, you were white, you were out of breath because you had to talk, and it was just it's one of those things where the performances these kids are having, and especially Bryce in his year, it's just. You're quiet. You're speechless. I can remember watching Barry Sanders when I was his teammate in the Lions. And you watch him, and it, like 5 guys on a defense in the NFL multiple times in a game would touch him, not tackle him. And you would just be quiet. And you would be like, you watch game film on Monday. Nice run, Barry. And he'd be like, nice run, Barry. You know what I mean? It was just, he just thought it was normal. And you're in awe of it. It's just it's absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, we're going to get some of that settled, you would think, this weekend with those massive games in the Southeastern Conference. We've got games all across the country we're going to pick coming up next on Touchdown Radio Tailgate on ESPNU. It's time to make picks on Touchdown Radio Tailgate for Week 10 of the college football season. He's Gino Torretta. I'm Taylor Zarzour. App State and Coastal Carolina just underway. Duke is at Boston College tomorrow. If the Blue Devils win that game, they get to bowl eligibility. That's impressive for Mike Elko in his first year as the head coach of the Devils. And number 23, Oregon State. How about the Beavs in the top 25? They play at Washington tomorrow night. That is a 10:30 kick. Minnesota and Purdue have a chance at bowl eligibility in the Big Ten. Baylor and Oklahoma, 2 5-win teams playing in the Big 12 against each other this weekend as well. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And Louisville, after a huge win against Wake Forest, plays 5-2 James Madison this weekend. Those are some games to keep your eye on. But it's time for some picks. I'm 50-24 on the season. Gino's 47-27. Here he comes, like he does every year, from behind to crush my dreams and then makes me pay for the steak at the end of the year. All right, Air Force is playing at Army. The Commander-in-Chief's trophy is on the line. If the Falcons win the game, they're the champs of the military, if you will, and they're 7-point favorites, Gino, on the road at West Point. It feels like you shouldn't be gambling on military teams, by the way. The game's on CBS at 11:30 on Saturday. Who you got?
I'm going to say I know it's going to be a tough, long road trip, but I'm taking Air Force.
Yeah, I am too. I'm going to go. I think they are the cream of the crop when it comes to Air Force, Army, and Navy. Now, if Army pulls off the upset here, then they still have a chance at the trophy. They would need to beat Navy at the end of the year. Number 18, Oklahoma State is at Kansas. The Jayhawks, remember when they were undefeated earlier in the season? And everybody, they were the talk of college football. Well, they've lost 3 straight games since then. They still, if they win the game, they get to 6 wins. The Pokes are 1.5-point favorites, Gino, at 3:30 on FS1. I am going to take Oklahoma State to get back on track. I can't believe I'm doing that after how bad they looked last week, but I'm going to do it.
You know, I was hoping you would, just because I'm going rock chalk Jayhawk, and I need three games, so need to pick something different than you. So I'm gonna take Kansas at home. I just, man, what happened? You know, what happened to Oklahoma State last week, and to not even be able to score any points against Kansas State. But I'm gonna take Kansas, and they'll make their bowl eligibility.
Maybe the game of the year so far in college football. Number 1, Tennessee at number 3, Georgia. 3:30 on CBS. The Dogs are 8-point favorites. That's crazy to me. They started at 10. It started to come down a little bit. I expect a really close game between the hedges. Who you got?
I would say I would agree with you. I thought the line would be less than 7, probably like 6.5. Tennessee's been lights out. This is tough. I'm going just home field. I'm going Georgia. I think both these teams are evenly matched. I'm going Georgia because it's at home, and Georgia because they have a better defense than Tennessee.
I don't see any way Tennessee loses to any of their remaining opponents on their schedule after this game in the regular season. If they win, they're 12-0, and I think that this puts them in the college football playoff if they win the game, but they won't. I got to see it to believe it. Look, they were great on the road against Pitt. That's an NFL stadium. They were great on the road at LSU. It was an 11 a.m. kick. That should be illegal in Louisiana. Those are nice wins and all. This is a different story between the hedges. I got to see it to believe it. I'm with you. I'm going Dogs in that game. Number 23 in the AP, Liberty, is at the Arkansas Razorbacks. Hogs are 13.5-point favorites in this game. Gino, I'm calling it, so I'm not picking it. 4 o'clock on SEC Network. Who you got?
Didn't he go there a couple of years ago and almost beat him? There was a coach that one of the old Arkansas coaches came back and almost beat. I'm taking Liberty. I don't know why.
Well, Bobby Petrino earlier this season.
Petrino earlier in the season.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm taking Liberty.
Taking Liberty? Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm 3 games down. We're taking shots early, T. I mean, it's like second quarter. I don't mind being aggressive with the ball.
Number 13, Kansas State is playing number 24,
what's Lamar say?
Texas.
You can't win the Heisman handing it off.
That's true. Yeah. Calling off, making you audible and turn your back on Coach Erickson. Lamar had that impact on you. Texas is a 2.5-point favorite on the road at K-State. Come on. Wrong team favorite. I'm going K-State and Coach Kleiman to beat the Horns this weekend.
I'm with you there. They keep it rolling with after that performance last week against Okie State as well.
Number 6, Alabama is at number 10, LSU in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. The Crimson Tide are 13.5-point favorites. 7 o'clock kick on ESPN. Who you got?
What's that slogan? What was that slogan?
Tide can't lose in Baton Rouge?
I'm going with that one. Tide can't lose in Baton Rouge.
I agree. I got to think that this is Alabama's best performance of the season. I think you're right. It kind of feels like Coach Saban with 2 weeks to prepare. I know LSU had that too. You're going to see the Tide play its best road game of the year. Number 4, I'm interested to see what we do here. Number 4, Clemson is playing at Notre Dame on Saturday night in South Bend. The Tigers are 4-point favorites, 7:30 kick on NBC. I'm picking Clemson. I think that Notre Dame's got a legitimate chance. That game was the game of the year 2 years ago during COVID when Notre Dame beat the Irish in South Bend, but I think Clemson wins this time.
Yeah, somebody's knows something in the odds makers, and I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if the home team in Notre Dame won. But I'm picking Clemson, and I think maybe some of all this talk of, they haven't played a great schedule. Mm-hmm. I think that Dabo gets them rolling. The offense comes out on point.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. All right, and finally, the Florida State Seminoles are 7.5-point favorites playing at the Miami Hurricanes on Saturday night, 7:30 kick on Touchdown Radio and on ABC. I hate to do this to you, my man. I love your city. I love you, but I'm chop them up. I got to take the Noles in this one. I think they're the better team.
Well, you know that I'm very impartial to my team, and I will pick against them. And I can't take a team that went 4 overtimes and didn't score a touchdown. That is what it is. I mean, I'm rooting for them, but Florida State, I think, is closer to their rebuild or whatever than Miami is right now with Norvell. So I'm gonna take the Noles as well.
Enjoy week 10 of the season. These games are terrific. Can't wait to talk about them next week when we are back with you on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. Make sure you listen to Gino on the call of Florida State, Miami on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. Touchdown Radio, that'll be heard here on Sirius XM as well.